Welcome to Season 2, our finale of the Business Matters podcast from the Win Technologies studio. Thank you to our media sponsor, Royal Credit Union. I'm Kaylynn Winegar. I'm the Vice President of Investor Engagement here at the Eau Claire Chamber, and I am absolutely thrilled to be interviewing Jen Miller from Rellim Senior Day Care. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll get into your business and the why of starting that?
So I'm not from Wisconsin. I'm originally from Nebraska. My husband's from South Dakota. We met online back in the day when it was embarrassing to say so. And he transferred up here. So that's why we're here in Wisconsin, and we love it here. I've been a nurse for 25 years. Before that, I was a CNA, and before that, I was a pharmacy tech. So I've kind of probably spent about 35 years in the medical field. So
you spent a lot of time caring for people. How did you end up in the healthcare industry altogether? Is that something you always wanted to do?
Well, my mother was a nurse, and I did not want to be like her. You know, that age where you're like, I don't want to be anything like my mom. And here I am. I'm very much like her. So I think I've always been drawn to the medical field, and even when I dabbled, I couldn't decide if I wanted to go into medicine, like as a physician or a PA or physical therapy. So I kind of spent about 7 years in college until I decided and landed on nursing, which is the best decision I've ever made. So.
That's incredible. Yeah. You haven't lived in Eau Claire forever, so how long have you been here?
It'd be 14 years.
Okay, so it's about the same amount of time that I've lived here.
Oh.
Well, yeah, I'm a transplant to Eau Claire as well, so it's a beautiful community, a great place to be. Thanks for opening your business here.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about Rellim. I know there's a special meaning behind the name.
Well, my husband and I could not decide. He felt like my suggestions were too girly, and I thought his were too boring. So we came up with using Miller backwards. So that's how we got Rellim.
So with your healthcare background, what led you to the decision to opening up this type of business for the Eau Claire region?
So it was about last year that my husband is the one who actually saw an exchange between a husband and wife at a facility who was getting a tour, and it kind of broke his heart because the husband was realizing that he was going to stay and she would be leaving. And the reasoning was something that could have been helped. She couldn't bathe him, and she didn't feel comfortable leaving him alone, but she needed breaks. And that's when we started talking of there really is nothing in between. You're either at home or you're placed. So how do you support people who need a little help and don't want them to leave the home? And so we were just kind of dabbling about that idea. At the time, I worked at Sacred Heart Hospital. And so that was in November last year. And then in January, when they announced the closure of HSHS, we felt like that maybe was our push to jump off the cliff and just go for it. So we weren't fully planning on it. It was just an idea and something we observed in the last 2 months prior. But we ended up finding an amazing location. In February, we put an offer on it. And then in March, my husband got deployed for 6 months. So it's been a really fun learning experience, having no idea what I'm doing, but just really just embracing every learning opportunity. I've learned a lot. My husband's now back, so that's good too.
Great extra support as you're opening your doors.
Oh, amazing support. The poor guy, I feel bad for him because he's the risk manager. He is the no guy, and he's been gone for 6 months. So I've said yes to a lot of things he had no idea. So I do feel bad because he came home and he experienced a little bit of shock. And we're already going 90 miles an hour. So he had to just hop right on. But he's working very hard and joining the party.
So it's such an incredible idea to bring daycare services to caregivers who desperately need them. My background, before I came to the chamber, I worked for the Aging and Disability Resource Center, and I think I entertained being a social worker for all of 24 hours when I followed one of our options counselors on a couple of home visits, and you just have to have a special heart for it, which clearly you do. So thank you so much for taking the risk and opening up this type of service. Could you talk a little bit about how you're building the services for daycare and for caregivers in this community?
Yeah, sure. So the we actually serve 5 different types of seniors, and that's the daycare aspect, but we do offer much more than that. But just starting on who we serve, the first one is the sandwich generation. So those are people who are middle-aged, still raising their children, and or they're working full-time. How do you keep your parent or grandparent home and out of placement? So our hours are 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., and that is specifically for the sandwich generation. Give them time to drop them off and pick them up around a work schedule. The second type of people we serve are caregivers. So it could be someone caring for a spouse with dementia or other disability that causes them to potentially have burnout. We can provide some of that relief so that way they can have a day to themselves, a full day to themselves. Or if they need more than that, because they need to be healthy and take care of themselves as well. But it could be children caregivers. It could be somebody who is employed, like they take care of people within their own home. They need to have breaks too. So it's really to serve all types of caregivers. The third is the lonely or isolated, the senior who lives at home. You may, hear they're falling. Their kids are trying to push them to be placed, but they don't want to. So if they come to us, we give them purpose. We get them up moving around. They won't be sitting in a chair watching TV all day. That leads to a decline because then they get stiff, they hurt, they take pain pills, they eat boxed foods. So
it's a huge mental load too, not to interrupt what you, as a services you're going through, but one of the questions I actually had for you was around loneliness. Mm-hmm. In my time 7 years ago working for ADRC, there was a loneliness project because it was such an epidemic of isolation for so many, and it's not just in our seniors. So having places of community and activities in which folks can converse and do things with their mind and move their bodies, and even in small manners, can really help the longevity of their life.
Correct. And the risk of heart disease, heart attacks, other disease processes when you're alone. I mean, there's failure to thrive if you don't have that human connection. It's not just for babies, it's for all humans. It's so important to have that value and purpose to give you the motivation to get up and move. So it absolutely does keep you healthier. So that's one of our purposes for sure. And then the last 2 we serve are hospital discharges. Working in the hospital, it's infamous for, people get pushed out because you need the bed, but with the closures, it's even more of an issue. And so this is a way that we can help out the seniors in the community. So let's say they're discharging and they don't qualify for a rehab or an assisted living, or the seniors refusing it because they want to sleep in their own bed. We can make that happen. So we have RN oversight. We can handle Foley catheters, ostomies. If they had surgery, we could handle surgical drains, wound vacs. We don't necessarily do the cares, but we know how to care for them, and we know if there's an issue, and that would be where home care would come in, or then we would follow up with somebody else. We don't technically do the care for them, but we can handle them. And then that way they get to sleep in their own bed at night. So maybe they just come to us Monday through Friday for 3 weeks until then they're safe at home. The last person is somebody who's on a waiting list for an assisted living facility. That is a very tough decision to make. A lot of times you feel like you're giving up your control, the comfort of your own home. It's scary. You don't know what to expect. And then you finally decide on a place and they have a waiting list. And at the time, usually people make that decision, they are at a point they can't wait any longer. And so then they get forced to go somewhere they didn't even want to go, which also can be pretty devastating. So we can help you safely wait at home. We can provide that Monday through Friday care, still keeping them up moving and walking and having that mobility and purpose while they wait safely. And we also believe in partnering with other community services. So for example, a private in-home caregivers, we could see them Monday through Friday, our hours, and they could still have that 24-hour care. And we can also provide a little bit of financial relief because we're about 50% cheaper than private in-home caregiving. So it's also a great way to allow for that to continue longer.
That's really incredible. I'm glad you covered the cost and affordability, because as you're entering that phase of life, even for caregiver decisions, but the individuals themselves, if they find their way to you, cost is a huge factor. So
It sure is, yeah.
So is your business officially opened? If not, when will that be? And are you starting to serve folks already?
Well, we've had some people, we already have people on the list that are waiting. We have decided, and we did announce the other day, that we are doing a soft launch. So we have some people that are start coming this Monday. We know it's kind of sticky with the holidays, but we decided to open early because it's also important as you're running around. You got to get the house cleaned, you got to do your Christmas shopping, grocery shopping, and you can still drop your senior off. Let us help alleviate the craziness of Christmas holiday, and then we'll officially open more so in January. But so, yeah.
That's great. I remember working at the Aging and Disability Resource Center when I would talk with folks, as my marketing role allowed me to be out in the community a lot, asking this question of, do you consider yourself a caregiver? And many folks said no. And then you'd start to ask some questions around, well, do you care for anyone? Not even just your immediate family or extended family. Maybe you have a neighbor that you check in on. That's being a caregiver. You're extending yourself on behalf of someone else, and maybe sending them resources or contributing to the conversation so they're not lonely, and making sure they're safe in their home. There's so many folks who don't consider themselves caregivers, understand all that is encompassed in being a caregiver. Your service, what do the conversations look like with some of those folks who have found their way to you, or as you've been out in this community talking about what you're now offering for citizens of the Eau Claire region?
Well, first of all, that's a really amazing perspective. I never thought of it that way. So I really appreciate that, and we'll be considering that.
You can use that now.
We have one senior who will be coming to us, and their spouse said they have been waiting 7 years for us. And so the type of people that we are serving, which has also been a fun little journey, because you plan in your head who will be coming. And so it's fun to see. We're finally getting to see how it's really going to play out. And we are finding there is, I don't want to use the word desperation, because they're doing an amazing job, but they feel like they're getting to this breaking point. And we've had people actually stop in even while we have construction workers and trucks still all there, wondering when we're going to be opening. And so, which is what led to the decision to do the soft launch right away, even though all of our services won't be available just yet, because it would be terrible, especially as a husband, wife, or a spouse, that you have to separate. And that this one particular senior, the spouse had said that they were just not ready for them to not be living, in the home anymore, but felt like there was truly at a breaking point. So
it happens somewhat traumatically when an accident or emergency happens, and there hasn't been transitional services like yours. It was really incredible working with the ADRC team to be some of that transitional staff and working through some of the conversation of what separation or leaving behind your belongings or your home or taking away some of the things you've done all your life, doing your own grocery shopping, making your own meals, taking away your license, that kind of stuff that you can now help with those conversations and transitions towards assisted living or long-term living if that's where they end up. I wanted to share my own grandfather. They lived together. My grandma and grandpa lived together for, I want to say 70 years or so. Long time. Farm family, didn't know anything else, very traditional. My grandmother took care of absolutely everything. She got incredibly sick. He could no longer drive. She passed. When he transitioned into long-term health care facility in Elmwood, he thrived. He lived 4 years past what they expected because the care was excellent. It wasn't care he had been receiving because she could no longer do the things that were necessary for him to thrive in life. Do you see things like that when offering, or do you anticipate seeing things like that when offering daycare services for folks?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sitting here thinking of all these people as you're sharing the story of, I mean, that is the textbook. It's also very similar to nurses. You set your own needs aside because you're usually working with other people, and it's why they talk about how self-care is so important. When we're talking to seniors who are calling for, with interest, usually that's one of the things that we really impress upon the one of them that's coming this week, they felt like they should wait until after the holidays. And that's also what we're trained is once the holidays are done, and we are actually opening early because we know this is a perfect time to allow us to help alleviate that. There's some hesitation. So it's interesting to go through that process because it's also hard to let go of the control. Mm-hmm. The one senior has some in-home caregiving, which is so wonderful, and it has allowed the spouse to be able to stay home, these past 7 years. But the question was, are you ever really off the clock then? Do you ever really get that time to rejuvenate and do truly what you want to do, not have to be kind of on call in case the caregiver has a question or needs something? And, they took the pause and was like, I never really thought about that. No,
Have you heard the term mental load?
I guess not.
Okay. And there's this concept of, particularly as women, because I am one, I'll speak from that perspective. There's a whole lot in our conditioning and our growing up. We are natural caregivers. We are empathetic towards other humans. Not to say that our male counterparts aren't, but that's just in our DNA in a lot of ways. And so we carry a mental load when it comes to caring for our household or things or the people around us. And so it's the unseen lists and tasks and activities that we are constantly taking care of, as opposed to all the stuff that is seen, taking out the trash and all that other stuff, rather than taking care of all the activities for your family or making sure that grandma and grandpa are taken care of and sending them a Christmas card, all that little unseen stuff. I imagine that as a caregiver accessing services like yours, it would help with some of that, because there is pride and control when it comes to releasing some of those things, some of that control in caring for another individual. I don't know how you navigate some of those conversations, as I've even noticed it when I talk with my husband about my 2-year-old, is just releasing some of the things and knowing that you can rely on another human being to take care of some of the things that need to be taken care of, as opposed to just, I can do it all and it is achievable and there's no reason I don't need to ask somebody else for help because I can do it all, but you really can't, and it's not good for your self-care to do that.
Oh no, it's really hard to ask for help. And then when you do, that's like the first step, and then it's allowing people to, they're not going to do it the same way you did it, and being okay with it. And I would say this past year it's been very good for me. If learning is anti-aging, I'm so young right now. But with my husband, Jim, with him being gone for 6 months, it was even hard to ask for help. Well, I shouldn't need to have to ask for help. I am totally capable. Like everybody does it, and being able to go through that aspect. But then the other aspect for our seniors is I missed him and I needed him for certain things. And, this is what it would be like if he wasn't here. Or there were some emotional days. And this was something that I knew would come to an end. And so it's like having that compassion for people is just like you were saying. It's not just the physical tasks. It is that mental load. But then there's the emotional aspect of it, of now all of a sudden I have to take my wife to the bathroom and I have to perform pericares on her, or, she had an accident. And that's like a whole other level to itself as well. I had one spouse say that we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, with the spouse that we'd be caring for. And but we have the background and the training, and we also are not emotionally tied to it. We're not biased to that. So we can be able to handle it in a gentler way because there's not a lot of the history between, us and the senior.
You specialize in it.
Yeah. And some of the other things, so one of the other things we offer is spa services. What's nice is the spa services was actually my husband's idea, because as we were trying to envision what it would it be like if we needed something, and he said, if I had to bathe my mother, that would be extremely awkward, and so he would not want to do it. And so when we came up with the spa services, but it's also, especially if somebody has dementia, or how often do you check out your backside? You could have a sore back, but not understanding that you actually have a wound back there, or you have a growth back there, or whatever. So one of the things that we do when we do spa services, by the way, we don't give baths because baths are for children. We do have spa appointments. We would never go up to the table and say, Joe, it's time for your bath. But when we do that, our staff will be trained. We'll do full skin assessments. If there's any wound or anything, that'll be a part of that RN oversight. We'll get measurements. We'll have the descriptions. We provide that to family. So that way then they can choose to pass it on to the doctor if they want us to help provide that information. We will, only if they ask. But it's a great way to also, again, goes back to our main goal of keeping them at home longer. So we can see some things that maybe we see as an issue that they would never think would be a concern. So
it's such a different level then of, it's not just daily living activities and sustaining what is currently existing, but achieving a higher sense of self and dignity and respect for those individuals, even in just the change of terminology and how you address certain things that are happening to individuals that are already really difficult to deal with. It actually makes me think of a conversation I had recently with our childcare provider where not being referred to as a daycare worker, but a teacher. They're highly specialized, very well trained experts in early childcare development and how crucial those years are for 0 to 5 years. They really are teachers in life. And the fact that my kid goes there day in and day out, not dissimilar to maybe daycare services where you're starting to see some of these folks come in and day out, continuing to learn or develop the skills in caring for themselves and even developing self-care for some of those caregivers. That's a really incredible journey to be able to give to some folks that isn't just releasing an adult to an assisted daycare facility or long-term facility. Those are incredible places, but there is a space for transition for some of these older adults. One of the things that I wanted to ask you as we're talking about seniors in this conversation, could you define what seniors means to Rellim? Because I know there's quite a range there.
Yeah, it's a great question. So anybody 50 and older.
Okay.
That's it's hard to do the cutoff, but we don't really want to go any younger than that because there are adult daycares and they're wonderful, and it's amazing to have intergenerational interactions and relationships, which by the way, we do plan to do. We're partnering with homeschoolers and we're going to have a whole competitions and learning and games and stuff like that we'll have.
There's such incredible research about that intergenerational.
Yeah.
That's great.
It really is. But then there's also importance of being able to interact and relate to same generation. And so that's why we decided to do the cutoff. We're really going to focus on geriatrics, which, by the way, it makes me really sad to say I would be eligible to be there. But, so you could maybe not necessarily need the daycare. We do provide other services, but so the focus is all seniors need some support. I think it's an area that kind of falls through the cracks with the baby boomer generation coming. It's going to get a lot bigger of an issue. I think a lot more people are going to fall through the cracks. When I was preparing for the business plan and getting some of the research and the statistics, they say that every day 10,000 people are turning 65 for the next 5 years. And of those 10,000 people, 7,000 need some type of health care. So that's every single day, 7,000 people for 5 years. I mean, that's a lot of people who are going to need help, and with, limitations in facilities and things like that, well, they already have their home. So if we can do things to help keep them at home, and so talking about some of the other services we provide, you could go to work, you could be, and not need daycare, or you don't need help with spa services or anything like that. We can still help with, I'm a more natural nurse, so we have red light therapy that can help with circulation, pain, wound healing, skin improvement. We also will do vibration plate, which helps flush your lymphatic system. That does not flush on its own. So it can help with anybody who has circulation issues, edema, pain, but it also helps you build your core. So it's great with strength and balance. So it can help prevent falls.
Prevention management is huge.
Yes.
We've been talking a lot about that since the hospital closures and how many resources our community has that are not being accessed right now just because many people don't know that they exist or feel like they need them, and you need them so much sooner than you think.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm reminded because your wonderful therapy dog, Samson, just came over to make his presence known to me that we need to introduce Samson. Okay. So do you want to tell us about Samson and why you brought him in today?
Yes. So Samson Harris Miller, he's a Bernese Mountain Dog. He's 3 years old. He is the therapy dog, so he will be ever present in the facility. We're actually doing staff training today, and they talk about the ladder of, leadership and who you go to, and the first person they have is Samson as the therapy
My heart.
dog, which he did already enact. There was we were talking about something emotional, and he right away went and laid his head on the staff member's lap. And I got the sweetest picture and she was just like, that really made me feel better. But obviously there's research and studies. I've always been drawn to it's animal assisted therapy, AAT. When I got my bachelor's in nursing, I made it the purpose of every assignment I did or paper I had to write involved animal assisted therapy and veterans, because I have a heart for veterans also.
Is there anything you don't have a heart for?
I don't know.
I feel like it warrants
on the day.
The question was warranted.
But just to understand the truly physiological impact that an animal has on giving you purpose. So we're going to have Ava Senior brush him, give them a job. He can lower blood pressure, decrease pain, lower heart rate, getting them to bend over. Just the simple acts of that are going to be really beneficial. And he's super cute. I might be biased, but it's hard to look at him and not smile.
Well, now that I've met him, I might be in the biased camp as well. But just like the minute I saw him walk into the door, I was like, wow, you just bring down so much stress and bring a smile to my face. And, he approaches you in such a gentle manner and all of the things that many, many, many pets do naturally. We used to have an English Mastiff, and when my grandpa was in long-term care, they didn't have a therapy animal, nor was our dog therapy certified, but we were able to bring him in because it was a small facility and they didn't have any dog allergies. And so one of the benefits for such a big dog is that they can walk right up to a chair or a wheelchair and lay their head on the lap of someone, so they don't have to bend over. And it was just an incredible interaction to have with this like beating heart that has just natural empathetic ability to be around humans. Was really nice. I mean, lap dogs and cats are wonderful too, but my heart is for larger animals.
Yes. I have to agree. He's super great. Like right now, he's got his head between my knees, but he pushes in, and it's kind of, I'm told for the Bernies, that's how they give you hugs. And so he just really does he loves doing that. So sometimes we're like, why is his head between your knees? That's the Bernie hug, and he definitely will stay there as long as you will let him. So, yeah.
As you were talking about the services that you're offering for caregivers and some of the seniors that come through your doors, you're also responding to the needs of our community and training for some of the healthcare workers that exist. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the classes or courses that you're offering?
Yeah, so before all of this, I'm a CBRF, which is the community-based residential facility. So it's be the assisted living facilities, group homes. For staff to be able to give medications, they have to pass this 2-day course. So I am one of the instructors that's associated with UW Green Bay. It is a requirement, and a lot of times facilities have to wait and build up the staff to make it feasible to pay for the course. So one of the things we'll be offering is at least to start, we'll be teaching it the first Tuesday and Wednesday of every month. So that way the facilities in the community don't have to wait. They can get them passing meds faster. And then they don't have to have a large group of students that they can't staff on the floor because they're taking the training. So hopefully it will be a good support for them to be able to get them up and moving, to be able to take care of the seniors that they are taking care of.
In addition to just the long career that you've had in healthcare, I just want to say thank you, and just so impressed that not only are you opening this business, it's an incredible journey to even open a business and take on that risk, but just the way that you've responded to the needs of healthcare and caregivers and healthcare workers in our community is really awesome. So thank you so much for taking that on.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Would your husband say the same thing? Would you say it's also been fun?
I don't know. Yeah. I think he is. I never thought I would be able to work with my husband because I do adore him so much. But it's just, everything's just fallen into place where I truly believe things happen for a reason, and you can look for the bad or you can focus on what is really there and the blessing and where are you supposed to be, what direction are you going. And we are fully embracing that and having to just trust the process. I have amazing people. I do truly believe in a community collaboration, having people support and lift you up. And that's been very, very present. And hearing the interest in what we're doing. It has been a challenge. There's not a lot of businesses out there that are offering similar to what we're doing, which is quite challenging because you want to follow guidelines, but then you don't necessarily have something to compare a copy off of. So then I have been teaching our staff, we just wing it. You know, we have amazing staff, by the way. Could not be blessed more with amazing staff who are just as invested as we are, which is going to be what makes it so great. But then they get to be a part of figuring out how we do some of the things. So if I may, for example, we don't want to be institutional. So should be a fun place. Just because you're 80 doesn't mean you're not competitive. It doesn't mean you don't have amazing ideas. It doesn't mean you can't still build things and do all those types of things. So one of the things with everybody being individual and unique, so should our activities. We are definitely going to have bingo, and we'll definitely have all the standards.
I just have to say with bingo, I'm remembering. I'm not even that old to not remember some of the things I've done in my life. But for some reason, I kind of skip over the fact that I have done CNA training and I was an activities coordinator for a couple of years, and it's actually contributed to my dislike of bingo because I delete it so many times and how competitive it can be. But God forbid you skip bingo. It really changes
I know.
how your residents interact with you.
Maybe that could lead to our failure if we don't have bingo. So we will have a lot of the standards, but I just believe that activities should be uniquely individualized. And that's one of the major parts of our care plan is if you love to be the center of attention and you love the drama in the positive way, you know, and you want to be fully engaged or the spotlight on you, that kind of activity is going to look way different for somebody who is a wallflower, introverted, was in the military and you don't need to know my business. You got to create different activities for each of those two scenarios. But at the same time, no matter what we would create for them if we didn't already have it, is the purpose of the activities will do three things. One, it will increase their strength and mobility, because that'll keep them home longer, to stimulate their mind, which will also be helpful, but then also to provide purpose through friendships and projects. And by projects, everything we make, bake, build, grow, fix, or whatever, we will sell. And all of the proceeds will go to a charity or a cause of the senior's choice. And I'm not sure if it'll be quarterly or just yearly as we build up the stuff. I'm not sure what will play. But I think that is important because, again, just because you are a certain age does not mean you cannot still take care of your community, contribute, and be a big player in
Reaching that phase of life doesn't mean you get put away somewhere.
Exactly.
And it also really helps further your cause for community as a business owner.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think healthcare is obviously amazing. I've been in it all my life, but unfortunately, we also are taught to think within the box, and we have tons of parameters and barriers, or your hand is tied behind your back, and that is a part of the training with our staff. Is nope, the sky is the limit. Think outside the box. It doesn't matter the cost or anything. So, for example, one of the interview questions that we had was we would do a scenario of a senior who he was in the Air Force. He was over in Japan. He loved telling his story of he got to escort the Japanese emperor, and he thought it was funny because they were the only ones that had guns, but nobody was really afraid of them because they were more afraid of the Japanese police with all of their training and their batons and everything. And he met his wife over there, and they planned to stay over there. He fell in love with Japan. But the military brought them back, and before he could move over there, his wife passed away. And so he longs for Japan, and he misses the food and the culture. And so the question is, what activities would you create for him? And so when I try to get them to think outside the box, like, of course, number one would be send him to Japan. Obviously, we can't do that, but can we manipulate that? Virtual reality is amazing. We could let him experience being there. We could have a Japanese day and get the food. If he has any items from home he wants to do, like a share and tell. He loves telling the story about the Japanese emperor, so he could even share that. Now we bring in the homeschool kids. They get to experience this wisdom and the things that he loves about something that maybe the kids don't get to experience, or even the staff and other seniors. So it'll really build that connection for him. And it was all just doing a virtual reality of taking the time to think outside the box of how could we draw him in, because now he's going to feel engaged and he's going to love it, and he's going to connect with people because somebody else is going to say, oh, I was in Japan, or whatever it is.
Well, I think it's so easy to, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, but in particular in healthcare, it's so easy to respond to just needing to do the care for the individual. And this really expands the thinking of caring for the whole person and what they individually like. When I was the activities director, we had a woman who was in our facility. She'd been there for maybe 5 or 6 years, didn't have any family, so wasn't able to have regular visitors, but she cleaned her entire life. She was a housekeeper. So we used to take, we would take a hole punch and, do a bunch of paper, but all those little dots we'd be able to sprinkle on her bed or her desk or even on the floor. And she would go about the facility cleaning up these little dots because that was her natural, that was her natural state. She loved to clean. And it was also an effort to keep her out of other residents' things, because she would go into their rooms and help reorganize or do laundry, which is invasive to some spaces. So just thinking so individual to the person, where it would probably seem a little weird if someone came into the facility and was like, why are you having a resident clean up all these little paper dots? But it was so specific to her needs, right? So, but it's better than giving her maybe a duster, like actually having her do daily cleaning. But it was so nice to have an activity that was specific to her and created a lot of joy for her.
Yeah, she has
gave
purpose.
Her something to do. Yes, absolutely. The purpose.
It's funny because my husband jokes he would never want to be there because I'm going to make them all work. But it's exactly like what you're saying. Think of, there's that generation, how many women they spent their lives in the kitchen. So our kitchen is an activity kitchen, and I want to plant apple trees and blueberry bushes and have those things. Number one, when we harvest, they can help. They're going to be stretching, moving. That's going to help their mobility. But then the ones who are in the kitchen, they can help cook and prepare the apple pie or whatever it is. But even before then, because that's obviously going to be a couple years down the road, we will have a table in there. So as staff are getting the breakfast ready, let them be in an environment that they feel the most comfortable in, and let them supervise or give the tips on how they think it should go, or what's, better for that.
There's so much life experience and expertise there. So why wouldn't you want to consistently learn from it? That's awesome.
So in all my 25 years of nursing, the majority of my experience was in hospice and palliative care. And so I spent a lot of time being in people's homes. So I learned, there's not a supply cabinet down the hall. So you learn to wing it, you learn to adapt. But especially with hospice, you only get to do it once. There's no do-overs. So you have to get in, quickly adapt, build that trust and relationship, and then meet the need that is most important to the patient. I would say in all areas of medicine, hospice is truly the one where the patient is the actual center of the care plan. And so I've done some pretty wild things, but it's truly to just help meet that person that was in that route. And I think that helped me prepare for Rellim, because just the stories, I'm just getting flooded with some ideas, which I don't think I should share. But sometimes some of the rules are made to be broken because it's about the person. Mm-hmm. It's not about a rule that was put on a piece of paper. Obviously, nothing that's terribly that we would cross over, but you got to make it that experience.
You've worked in this community for a while. You're starting your own business. What led you to coming to our Chamber of Commerce and immersing yourself in what we have to offer here, and how is it helping your business?
Well, to say it's like a no-brainer. I think, the first and foremost was because it's not that I don't know what I'm doing. I just don't have the experience. And so I would watch a lot of things to kind of learn as we're going along. And one of the best piece of advice I've heard so far is you don't have to know it all. You just have to surround yourself with people who do. And so you go to that person that knows what you don't know. And the chamber, it's got everything there. And it's also been really great. So I'm super sad I did not make it to the business after hours this week. But that's been really wonderful because you're connecting with people who are like-minded. That's also something that I'm learning, which I was told, I just didn't believe it, but I am now learning it is I have amazing friends, but your friends are a certain group of people that are there to love you, and you have your relationships, but they don't always fall into the suit of challenging you, holding you accountable as a business person, and understanding the scariness of the things that you're doing. And so connecting with people at the chamber, the very first event I went to, this gal gave me her card and was like, if you have any questions, you need anything. And that is consistently across the board since day one. And that's hands down priceless. So
you came to one of our chamber orientations this year before your business was even established.
Yeah. I'm a preparer.
It was one of the orientations, one of two this year that were super memorable for me. You and a couple of other women were in the room, and I think Chelsea was actually in the room for that one in particular. And there was one dude who was in the room too. And it's so interesting every time we do an orientation. It's very intentionally so, but it's not just for current investors of our chamber. We really want to invite people who are thinking about joining our chamber. We're inviting people who've been around for years and years and maybe need a refresher. And that day, it just seemed to be the right vibe. Everyone was in the room to kind of learn, and every introduction that happened just took the next level and the next step up. And I think you made some really great connections. We get to this poor gentleman in the room, and every other circumstance could have led him to be just here's who I am and not show up with that personality, but he did in strides.
He was amazing.
It was awesome. And so it's just and many of our orientations and interactions are incredible, but that's one of the most memorable ones that I've had this year, where it just fuels me in the role that I have here at the chamber too, to have a room full of those individuals who are just excited to show up and talk and interact and look for those resources. So thanks for being a part of that.
Oh, I am so grateful for it. And I actually think about that day also quite a bit, thinking, aren't we supposed to have like reunions or something?
I've never thought of
we
that.
We really should, because
we should.
It you feel connected. There were amazing people in that room. Yeah.
We love to end our podcast with a question about why business matters to you. We've lightly touched on it throughout the entire podcast, but I'll leave you with that question. Why does business matter to you?
Ooh, I'm not prepared for that question.
You can think on it.
So I did this Bible study, and it was on somebody in the Bible, Joshua, and if you know the story of Moses, Joshua is this young guy who has to step into his shoes. And it was such an impactful learning thing, because it talked about being a leader and also following your leader, and how easy it is to give your opinions and make judgments. And just taking this particular story of this young guy, now you have all these old people or older people who are like, who are you to tell me, whatever. And it just really has stuck with me because it made me appreciate my bosses and my leadership, and then also understanding, for example, in healthcare, your boss is not like the end-all be-all either. And I know that's how it is in a lot of businesses, and really learning to appreciate how hard it is for them to do their role. And as an employee, I would try to do my best to make it as easy as possible for them, because that's a hard challenge. But then flipping it of now you're the leader, and holy cow, that's also very challenging, especially for me. I have this heart where my heart for the staff are just as much as for the seniors. And so how do you make them feel valued and special? But knowing, of course, in this aspect of healthcare, it's a lot of ladies. So now you get all the stereotypical with the ladies and the emotions and good days, bad days. And how do you guide them where, not only do you want to foster an amazing connection, because if you truly care about the person you work with, then you're not going to gossip behind their back, and you're going to help them, lift them up and support them. But also as a leader, knowing that they may judge me on what I'm doing, and learning how to have the disclosure so that they feel connected to me, so they can trust me to be able to guide them too. So it's a long way around to say, why does business matter? Business matters because that is every aspect of everybody's life. Like, everybody has a job, whether they're a leader, whether they're the staff, or whether you are a customer. Business matters, and it is the livelihood. And the nice thing is all of the things all these years I said, if I would do this if I was in that leadership role, and now I get to do it, and now it's really scary having to do it. But so I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but
it's your answer, and it's
okay,
an incredible one. So you don't ever question that. I mean, that we don't prep for that question on purpose, because we want, in some ways, a vulnerable but very genuine response to that. And every single one of them has been different. And I haven't done all the podcasts, but every single one of them has been different.
I think of as a kid, usually as teenagers, and sometimes you're not the greatest to your parents. And then as you get older and then you have kids or you have these situations, you're like, oh yeah, now I get it. And there's a lot of times where I'm like, call my mom up, Mom, I'm sorry. Like, I get it now, and it's very similar aspect of, being on both spectrums in the business. And so I think it just, doing the best you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
One of the biggest challenges that it has been creating Rellim and then getting the message out there is, as far as I know, there isn't a business out there like what we're offering. And so it can make it hard for people to understand what we offer. And so, first of all, I'd be encouraging people to check us out and ask or call if you have a question, but to understand that we are not just a daycare. We intentionally put daycare in there, though, because that's the biggest group of people that we will be serving. But the next is that the salon and spa services. You can get your hair done, you can get a mani-pedi, and you can get that bathing piece done. Maybe you don't need the daycare at all. But then the other level is the more functional, where we start talking about the add-on services. So not only are we doing the full-time care, we're doing the part-time care, but then we're doing the ones that are just like myself could use the service. It's rough getting older, and you get aches and pains, and you're stiff, and you don't want to take a pain medication that makes you drowsy, and it has all the side effects. And so that is the other aspect that we're offering. You can be in and out. It could be a 10-minute treatment, but all of those things on top of the red light therapy and the vibration plate. So I am an essential oil nurse. I'm from a medical perspective, though, so I understand the chemistry, which is similar to medications. So I can make protocol recommendations for disease processes. I was one of 300 medical professionals invited to a medical symposium for essential oils. I got to work with, or not work with, but meet and talk and discuss with surgeons and ER doctors and oncologists and medical biologists on using true essential oils that have a place in healthcare and that they use them. So there's a doctor in South Dakota who uses them in his ER. You come in and he will give you the option, do you want a medication or do you want to try the essential oil?
Wow.
And which I think is so impactful. But then I don't know if I can give a shout out to the Red Letter Grant, but we were recipients, very graciously recipients, and so of this season from the Red Letter Grant, and that grant is going to allow us to provide something called vibroacoustic therapy, and it is basically a sound bed. You lay on top of a speaker. It will calm your body at a cellular level. So it's great for pain, anxiety, depression, PTSD, insomnia, but it's especially beautiful for dementia. And so if somebody's having an episode or if they are unsettled or they're just really having an off day, they can just lay on this bed, feel the vibration of the certain sounds that are geared towards calming the cells. And that's thank you to the Red Letter Grant. But so you don't have to go to the daycare. You don't have to do the service. You just come in, we can schedule that appointment and you can go in and get on the sound bed. And then I also believe that I always said that I would be a terrible business owner because I always want to give away things. I don't want it. So I made very careful attention to all of the pricing, that it is very affordable. Obviously, we do need to make money, but it is not about that. It's that nurse part of, if you only knew that there are other options. Medications have their place, but there are other things you can do to incorporate to feel better, move better. That's something that we also provide.
Totally achievable things.
Absolutely.
If you just learn about how to incorporate them.
Yes.
Maybe one more question, actually. How do people find you?
Oh, great question. Well, you can go onto our website at www.rellimseniordaycare.com. And Rellim, remember, is just Miller backwards, Rellim. We also have a Facebook page, which you can search us at Rellim Senior Day Care. Or you can give us a call at 715-600-0746. So we are located at 3410 Sky Park Boulevard. It is right off of Highway 37, just before the I-94 interchange. So if you know where the Best Western is, we're across the street next to the old bank, which is now All Kids Dental.
And for those who are listening, you can also find Rellim on the Chamber's directory. If you're searching the Chamber website, you get direct contact to Jen and her team. So, Jen, I just want to say thank you so much for spending time with us today, talking about everything that you're attempting to accomplish with your brand new business. We're so excited to help support you. We really appreciate you and Samson taking the time to be here today. Hopefully get a chance to walk around with Samson and meet some of our other team.
Oh, yeah, I would love that.
I want to thank all of our audience and listeners for joining us today to learn more about Rellim and everything that they're offering for our community. For our listeners, I do want to send an invitation. Registration is open for our annual meeting, which is on January 30th. We're so excited to have it at the brand new Sonnentag Center. We hope that you can join us for that really incredible evening, especially as we go into 2025 celebrating our 110th birthday. You can check out the registration for that on our website. It's open now, and we would absolutely love to see you there and have you help us celebrate with big birthday energy. So that closes out season 2. Thank you so much, Jen, again, for being here as our final guest for Business Matters podcast from the Wynn Technology Studio. And a massive thank you to our media sponsor, Royal Credit Union. Without both of those sponsors, we would not be able to have this podcast. We greatly appreciate it. And we'll catch all of our listeners in season 3.